jumping into designing and developing a voice application, it is crucial to build a strategy, a foundational strategy for your voice application. So we have Sina Kahen of the Voice course that will lead a workshop that will leave you confident and certified as well in applying strategic principles to any voice project. Before Sina takes over, I'd like to just mention a few things about Sina. As I just mentioned, he's the co-founder of the voicecourse.co, which is the best-selling online course for conversational AI strategy and design. He's a qualified biomedical scientist and also has an MBA from the Imperial College of London. And he is a conversational AI thought leader with lots of experience and traveled all over the world sharing his knowledge and experience with so many corporations. So Sina, the stage is yours. We're all interested to know what you have to tell us about, strategically going about voice technology and not just jumping into it. And we are all ears.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you for hosting me. What a wonderful, wonderful initiative. I've been going through some of the different events different talks that are going on, and it's really, really fantastic to see, the work that you're all doing to make sure conversational AI gets the attention that it deserves. I'm just going to share my screen, so you should be able to see it in a moment. Okay, are you all able to see? Yep. Let me just connect it here. There we go. Can you just confirm that you can hear and see me? Let me see in the chat to make sure. Yes. Okay. Brilliant. There we go. There we go. So let me reconnect that. So I'm really, as you saw from the intro, I'm very, very into the strategic side of conversational AI. I'm really into the strategic side of anything that I do in my career, because I think that it's something oft forgotten about. We're very quick to go into the design and development stage, and we don't really have the first principles that allow us to go into the design and development stage with a coherent philosophy, with a coherent plan to go ahead and create something that will actually be used again and again and provide ultimately some value to the user. So the topic of the talk, the topic of the workshop really is, how can we enter the world of voice with a strategy? And I'm going to start a little bit with regards to who I am. So I've got two hats on within the voice space. The other hat that I've got is very much in the medical technology and medical AI industry. But with regards to voice, I'm the co-founder of VACE. VACE is a group of designers, strategists, engineers who are very much focused on developing frameworks, providing thought leadership for those who are looking to delve into the world of conversational AI, whether it's advising brands on their strategy or advising venture capital firms on what kind of voice technology based or conversational AI based companies they should invest in. So that's really what we've been doing with VACE. On the voice course side, so the other side of the hat, if you like, it's really taking a lot of the learnings that we've gathered from spending so much time with different brands and figuring out how can we put together some content that will allow, from basic level all the way to senior level, brands and designers and developers to get a good enough foundational grasp of the strategic considerations for a voice application. And it's very much a foundational course, but it's there to provide the first principles before you would want to delve into conversational design courses and other courses that will go into the details. So it's a very macro vision of the conversational AI and voice space. And if you want to find out more information about me, as I mentioned, that you can find it on the website. So what's happening? The the question that I think really needs to be addressed, because sometimes when a new emerging tech comes out, we just jump into it and not really think about what's happening. And what's happening is that this little device is really blowing up. We've seen from 2016 all the way till last year, and the data is obviously going to come out on 2020, that the smart speaker is being embedded in so many different homes, is being embedded in so many different assistants, and so many different devices around the home, as well as in the car, in our AirPods, headphones, etc., etc. So there's this huge explosion of this smart speaker world, really, and the adoption, as we know, is the fastest adoption rate of any technology that's been out there. So this is a technology that's very much becoming more and more embedded in our day-to-day interactions with our technologies. And what that means for brands especially is that this is now, voice assistants are now very much another interface in which they can communicate with their brands. So obviously we've got mail, we've got the chatbots, we've got video, we've got mobile, in-store, online, and now we've got this voice interface where we're really able to see how brands are able to communicate with their consumers on a more emotional level that they may not have been able to via other platforms and interfaces. So it's really a new addition to the digital ecosystem of a brand. And I think it's worth looking at the hype cycle. The hype cycle is something that essentially represents what happens when a new technology comes out, the different stages that take place when a new technology hits the scene. So you've got expectations on one side and time on the other. So when a new tech comes out, such as voice, for example, there's this innovation trigger where the expectations in a very short amount of time go through the roof. Voice is going to be the medium through which we're going to do all our searches. Voice is going to be the thing that cures cancer. Voice is the be-all and end-all. And this, peak of inflated expectations that we arrive to as a result of this innovation trigger can be quite damaging, because it puts the technology on such a pedestal that when it doesn't meet those expectations, it may be that a lot of brands and a lot of designers and developers may just think that, voice isn't what it was, hoped to be, and it will essentially be something that people don't want to dig into and explore. But what we've realized is after this peak of inflated expectations, you've got this expectation level decreasing, and you arrive at this trough of disillusionment, which basically means this stage of wondering, what the heck am I going to do with this technology? What use is there for it? And I think where we're at now is this slope of enlightenment, where in a lot of the use cases that we thought would work with voice, all of the use cases we were throwing at the wall to see what sticks, we've now determined what works, what doesn't work, and we're still determining what works and what doesn't work. But we're in this slope of enlightenment where we're starting to figure out exactly what it is that voice can do, so that we can reach this plateau of productivity, which will allow us to be efficient with the use cases that we're using voice assistants for. And I think it's worth figuring out right now, it's worth noticing right now that we're at this stage. So it's a very exciting stage, because a lot of the things that haven't worked have been defined, delineated, and clarified, so we can focus on what does work. So what do we need to consider for a voice strategy? This is the ultimate question, really, of the whole workshop. And in a lot of the work that we've done, we've noticed that there's essentially 3 pointers, strategy pointers, really. 3 main questions that need to be asked to be able to guide you to figure out whether or not voice is really a solution for the kind of product, brand that you're associated with. The first pointer, is your product or service considered low or high involvement? What does that mean? We're going to dig into that a bit later. Why does this matter? Because this will manage the expectation of what your voice experience can provide to the consumer. Another strategic pointer, what is the consumer journey, the existing one, for your product or service? At what stage are they interacting with what interface? What are the interactions that they're having, pre-purchase, during purchase, post-purchase? You've got to map out what exactly is occurring now. Why does this matter? Because then it will allow you to essentially discover consumer pain points. Which of those stages come with a certain level of friction and pain? Because then it can really provide some impetus for you to determine where a voice experience can enhance one of those stages. And another strategic pointer is to consider what data you have, because then we're able to determine what insights can you gather from them. Why is this important? Because we can really start using data sets that we've got that we thought would have no use for creating novel features within a voice experience. A very basic example I like to give is Capital One, the bank, the financial behemoth really out in America. And Capital One have realized that they've got a data set which essentially states how much people are spending in certain areas, in certain localities. So given that, they created a voice assistant, a voice application, which has a feature wherein you can say, I have a $10 or $20 budget for dinner, and then it can tell you where to go and eat based on which restaurants they've identified wherein an average $10 spend or $20 spend is taking place. So based on the data set they've got on how much people are spending on average in different restaurants, they can then provide this almost quantitative TripAdvisor where it's telling you, or advising you where you can go eat based on your given budget. So really important to figure that out. Now, for the fact that we don't have all day to go through the strategic insights, I think what we'll do is we'll stick with the first strategic pointer, which I think is the most foundational thing that needs to be considered in all technology adoption strategies for companies. And that is your product or service considered a low or high involvement product or service? So it's important to mention involvement level. Before I do that, I just want to quickly stop page, see if we've got any questions. Nope, no questions, no private questions either. That's a good sign. Let me connect again. Level. This is fundamental, as I mentioned earlier. An involvement level, I think it's like, you can just put it in the discussion, in the chat. You can say no if you don't. Nope. Nobody? Okay. I hope you can all still hear me. Yeah, awesome. So involvement level is an oft forgotten concept. It's the importance of perceived consequences of the purchase of your product or service to a consumer. Now, the level of involvement, it determines the extent of effort that a person puts into the purchase decision. It could be the amount of time they spend making the decision, or it could be the amount and quality of information required for them to make a decision that, yes, I'm going to purchase this product or service. So how involved are they with regards to time and quality and amount of information in order to be able to make this decision to purchase? And a way to kind of clarify it is to look at some high involvement examples and some low involvement examples. With high involvement examples, you really have more attention and information. Processing is required. Think of when you're buying life insurance. That's a high involvement thing. You're not looking to just quickly make a decision. It requires more of your attention. It requires more information to be processed. Another example of high involvement is that it's, a criteria of it is that it's generally enduring. You've got a long-term interest in the product or service. It's not something that you're just going to use once and forget about it. Higher post-consumption evaluation by users. So usually with high involvement products and services, post-usage, it's more likely that a user is going to evaluate it, discuss it, and really consider whether or not it was the right decision making, if they had made the right decision. And usually with high involvement products or service, there are slow decisions. Again, if it comes with a high cognitive load, if it comes with more attention and information required, obviously the decision will be made in a slower fashion. And as I mentioned, it's very cognitive. So it's it's not solely focused on emotional. It's very much focused on the rational side, where you have to see if this is a logical decision as well. Now, with regards to low involvement products and services, usually they require less attention. Less information processing is needed. Generally, it's situational, so it's not enduring. It's not long term. It could be just momentary decision that you're going to purchase this low involvement product. And there's usually lower post-consumption evaluation. So after they've used it, it might not be something that they consider or go back to or discuss or evaluate. And fast decisions, as it makes sense, if all of these things are being done in a quick, format, and it's not really taking so much of your time, and there's not many long-term risks involved in it, you make a fast decision for it. And it's more emotional. It's not as cognitive. It's more affective. So it's to do with the emotional side. Now, what I really want to ask you is, given the fact that we've kind of defined certain criteria of what makes a high involvement product and a low involvement, actually tell me some examples of what you think would be a high involvement product or service. So if anybody is able to just give one example, I've given one already, life insurance. So feel free to tell me what would be a high involvement product or service given the description that I've just given of a high involvement product. Travel industry, high-end tour package. Okay, good examples. And a low involvement product or service. Again, something that's affective, it's emotional, quick, don't have to think so much, doesn't have many long-term effects. Fast food, great example. Grocery shopping, good. Sports updates, entertainment. Okay, great examples. So you've essentially, we've got starting to see these two really, really important areas. And again, it's such a basic thing to go over, and you're going to start seeing why it relates to strategy as we move forward. And the level of involvement, really, it's based upon three specific areas: social risks, financial risks, health risks. Social risks, will it make me look bad? Will it impact my social community, my social interactions? If I buy something that's a disaster visually, it's got quite a high social risk. If it takes me away from family or my friends, it's got a high social risk. Financial risk, it could be something that's very, very expensive. If it's a high financial risk. Health risk, if I buy this, it may impact my health. So with regards to high involvement products and services, they have high social risk, high financial risk, high health risk, which is why it requires all that extra time and cognitive attention to come to a decision. And some examples were already given: life insurance, cars. And low involvement products and services, they come with low social risk, low financial risk, and low health risks. Beverages, fast food, as was mentioned, and low cost subscriptions. Now, how does this relate to what we're talking about with regards to voice? This is just one example. We've got at the top there cognitive and affective. So cognitive, if you think of it as more rational, logical, spending time thinking. Affective is more to do with emotional, as I mentioned. Now, let's look at the matrix. If your product is high involvement, but it's cognitive, sorry, let me step back actually, because it's better to give some background to this. We kind of associated high involvement very much with cognitive and low involvement with affective, right? But actually, you may have some high involvement products that come with an affective nature or an affective element, or you may have some low involvement products that aren't as effective as we thought, and actually comes with a little bit of more cognitive attention. So this matrix really allows you to determine exactly where your product and service fits into the high involvement, low involvement, cognitive, affective space. Now, a high involvement product that comes with a cognitive side or cognitive attention, obviously car, house, computer, appliances, the message that would really be required to come across in the voice application that you've designed or developed, or you're going to design and develop, should be a focus on information. It's not really going to be on the purchase decision. It's not going to be at the purchase stage. You're not going to be buying a car or a house computer, or a house or a computer from just a voice interaction with no screen. Very, very unlikely. So the focus there should be on providing information so that you can do the purchase at a later stage. You could have a high involvement product such as jewelry, fashion apparel, music, art, a restaurant, and even a car or a house. They may have obviously emotional elements. So the message there could be focusing on strong emotions. So providing a voice experience that can tap into some sounds that will impact the emotions of the user in a certain way. So they won't make the purchase on the voice experience, but it can trigger some emotions in them to want to get closer to the purchase stage on another platform. Low involvement products, household items, basic food items, the message really should be a simple point of differentiation. You could have a voice experience that you can have the purchase stage embedded within that, and we're going to discuss that a bit later. But the message that you're trying to get across is that this product that I've got, which is low involvement, is different from others. And with regards to low involvement products that are more on the emotional side, such as alcohol, candy, ice cream, snacks, again, it's tapping into the emotional side of the user. So using the right sounds, using the right voice, using the right kind of auditory aura to kind of differentiate your product from others out there. And I think this is where we really start seeing how all of these abstract concepts fit into a voice strategy. Because the question is, everything I've just said, how does it influence the voice strategy? So we're going to go through some examples with low involvement products. So you've determined after this framework, after this time spending, attention on the involvement level of your product, you've determined that it's low involvement. Now, if it is, this is the kind of thing your voice application can offer. You've got the pre-purchase stage of building awareness. So you could be providing inspirational, practical content before they make the purchase. You can provide features for the pre-purchase stage of driving engagement. So the difference between generating awareness and driving engagement. And that difference can be very much in the fact that driving engagement could be that you're having the person utilize certain features on the voice experience, which is beyond just them receiving information. It's them actively being involved in something. And what that is, it really depends. There is no one size fits all. But the idea is that there will be features embedded within this voice experience that will drive engagement. Transaction facilitation at the purchase stage. So because it's a low involvement product, which comes with low cognitive load, low health risk, low financial risk, low social risk, it's more likely that someone's going to purchase it from a voice experience. They can buy it there and then. You can have your voice assistant ask, would you like to purchase this item? And it can say yes, because it doesn't require a screen or a lot of attention to try and make that purchase decision. And of course, quick information for a product that you otherwise wouldn't spend much time to go online or to go to a store to find about. There's so many questions and so much information that a customer may have about your product or service that they may need to go online or go to a store to find out, but actually it's much easier and lower friction to be able to just ask the voice application that you've created to be able to provide that information for you. So these are low involvement. These are features for low involvement kinds of products and services. And now let's look at high involvement. Again, you've done the analysis and you've looked at the high involvement product and service, determined that that is what you have. So your voice experience can provide features at some other stages, some of them similar. Again, pre-purchase stage of awareness and engagement. I think that's the most important thing for it, because you're not going to be buying jewelry and you're not going to be booking flights and hotels. Flights you may, if it's a recurring thing, but if it's, a heavy package that involves quite a few different elements of your trip, it's likely that you're going to want to screen or you're going to want to spend time thinking about it, and it's not going to be reduced into a few minutes or few seconds conversation with a voice assistant. So that's really where you can use a voice application, not to necessarily purchase the high involvement product or service, but to provide awareness, generate awareness and drive engagement associated with your brand or product. A post-purchase stage service. So the customer's already purchased the holiday, the jewelry, the house, whatever it is that they've purchased. So now you can provide service post-purchase. So you're almost bypassing this purchase stage, but you're still there in the form of a voice application to aid customers in that evaluation stage. Because remember, with high involvement products, post-consumption evaluation, the rate of it is much higher than in low involvement products where people don't even think about it really after they've purchased it. So being there at the right time after they've purchased it is quite unique. And post-purchase stage, building of brand advocacy. We're seeing more and more, when I was doing my MBA, that brands are spending so much time trying to build brand champions, trying to build brand loyalty. And you may think, I'm a toilet paper provider. You may think I'm a toothpaste provider. Why would any consumer want to, be loyal to my brand? I think that's a very, very short-sighted view of things, because at the end of the day, there are many different ways you can provide inspirational content that are almost ancillary or tangential to your product and service, but it still builds the brand awareness post-purchase with the user. So this isn't something that you can determine now. It's something you need to go away and think about what it is. But the idea really here is that with high involvement stuff, it's predominantly on the pre and post-purchase side where you'll find the appropriate features, and not on the purchase side itself. Now, before we get on to that, let me just see if anybody's got any questions. Any questions, anybody? I really want to try and make it sure it's more of a workshop vibe as opposed to just a presentation. So please do feel free to jump in and ask any questions. No? Okay. Mike, great to see you. Good to see you here. Okay, brilliant. So let me present again. So this is what I was mentioning earlier. When I were talking about low involvement, people may go away thinking, this is not something that will require a voice application. No one wants to build brand advocacy and brand loyalty with something that is essentially low involvement. People don't think about it much. They just make a decision like that. And I think this is a huge misconception. It's, we see more Coca-Cola ads than we see ads about holidays. There's a reason for that, because, low involvement products and services do not always mean that you will drive low engagement. It all depends on the features that you're providing or the emotional elements that you're tapping into of the user that can drive increased engagement. So do not equate low involvement with low engagement. And I'll give you some examples. We all know about this hat. It's a hat that some people love, some people hate. The association some people love, the association some people hate, and some people are in the middle about it. But at the end of the day, this is a very low involvement entity. It's a cap. But it's generated so much engagement, awareness. It's done so much, given the fact that it's just a low involvement cap. So you got to think outside of your box, whatever it is that you're providing in the form of, low involvement products or services, that with the right plan, you can drive engagement, recognition, awareness. And this may sound like a marketing or advertising class to you, but actually it's the fundamental core element of any strategy for any emerging technology that companies need to focus on, that when they're trying to bring into their digital strategy. So, as I mentioned, a lot of my voice work, half of my other work is in corporate innovation. And the idea of a low involvement entity driving low engagement all the time is just a big myth. So it's really important to start figuring out exactly where you fit in that matrix and try to drive the correct engagement towards it, and not to feel like, I'm just selling this, so there's not much attention that it can get. Another example, beverages, alcohol. We determined that's low involvement. But this is an example of actually a low involvement entity creating something that drives engagement via voice. And this is TALISKER by the guys at Diageo, one of the major beverage companies in the world. And they created this TALISKER whiskey tasting experience. So you can't buy the whiskey on the voice application, which I would argue you should be able to, because it's a low involvement product. But there's this pre-purchase, actually not even pre-purchase, there's this post-purchase, heavily post-purchase feature that's been essentially the influence of creating this voice application, where you're able to sit there with your glass of whiskey and go through this experience with a Scottish accent, with sounds in the background, where you have this immersive tasting experience at home. This is just an example of something where you think, it's just another drink. But actually, no, a low involvement beverage is able to drive engagement and really make it stand out. Because remember, with low involvement products, it's about standing out. Because it's such a quick decision that someone makes, there is even more onus on the brand to ensure that their product differentiates from others, because it's such a quick decision-making process that there's not enough survival time. So, as I mentioned with regards to strategy pointers, these are really the three on the left, the three main pointers that we like to use and we've seen be successful. And I know I've dug in mainly into the low and high involvement side of things, and I said that that's going to be the core of the talk, but I do want to tap into a little bit about the consumer journey, because I think that's also fundamental. Before I do that, does anybody have any questions on low or high involvement area that I've just been discussing? No questions? Okay, so we've got to get in touch afterwards then. Great. Okay, no questions about that. So what I shall do is move on. Hold on 1 second. The camera is somehow like that. Hold on, apologies. Okay, can you see me now? Yep, perfect. Okay. What I was discussing there. Now, with consumer journey, I want to go back to something. I really think it's worth going back to it because it's something that has been missed out on. When we talked about this, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this because it's really here that I think we find a lot of the challenges with regards to the strategy. Now, with the innovation trigger, as I mentioned, this is really the time when voice was introduced to the scene and it blew up. I really spent a lot of time with the team at VACE figuring out, why did we arrive at this peak of inflated expectations? What was it that a lot of brands were doing that, for all intents and purposes, put voice on such a pedestal that meant that we would go through this trough of disillusionment where a lot of brands thought they're not even going to invest anymore in voice? And the number one thing that came by to us through our research was with regards to consumer journey. And I want to take off the screen just so I can... Important, sometimes we just go behind the screen. Now, with consumer journey, one of the main challenges that you have is there are so many different interfaces within the consumer journey. And if you think of the consumer journey really split within 3 different stages, you start to get a picture of what I mean. So you've got, for all intents and purposes, a pre-purchase stage. You've then got a purchase stage, and then you've got the post-purchase stage. Now, the pre-purchase stage is very much associated with generating awareness, making sure that people are aware of your product and service. And then the purchase stage is obviously they are convinced enough from that awareness generating things that you've done as a brand to let the customer know about your product. The purchase stage is when they actually purchase. But then post-purchase is obviously the experience they have after they've purchased, the availability, the access that the user may have with you as a brand. And from there, move on to build loyalty. And the idea is that after the post-purchase stage, if there is enough happiness or contentment with the purchase decision, then the post-purchase stage, there's almost like this link back to purchase. Why is there a link from post-purchase to purchase and not to pre-purchase? Because the customer doesn't need to go through pre-purchase convincing anymore. From the post-purchase stage, if they need what you can offer, if they need it again, they don't need to go through pre-purchase awareness generating. They go straight to purchase. And what I realized was, and what we realized as a VACE team, is that a lot of companies, they haven't delineated their consumer journey sufficiently. Because if you think about it, each of these three main stages, pre, during purchase, post purchase, there are lots of different technologies or interfaces that are taking place between the brand and the consumer. So for example, in the pre-purchase stage, you may see ads, you may see stores while you're walking past, stores with lights and nice visual elements that will entice you to basically recognize that brand. A lot of information provided, whether it's social media, videos, etc., etc. All of the pre-purchase stuff. So we see web as an example, banner ads, mobile, maybe getting notifications through another app, social media, maybe getting advertising videos popping up, etc. on social media. So these are different interfaces there. And there are obviously different requirements and there are different expectations that a user, a customer would have at that stage. Then you go to the purchase stage and we think of how, what are the interfaces that a customer has with a brand at that purchase stage. Obviously, it could be in store, they're behind the till. So the customer goes to the till, the money desk, and that's the purchase stage. Or it could be e-commerce. They actually make the purchase online on a website or via mobile. And then there's the post-purchase. It could be, for example, after you've purchased a car, to get that post-purchase interaction with the customer or with the brand, you have to go in store. Or there are obviously websites where they have frequently asked questions for post-purchase, where you can go on there and have the interaction with the brand via web. So a lot of these brands have done this. They've got the customer journey. A lot of them don't, but the ones who do, they haven't really determined what are the pain points in our current customer journey at each of these stages. And we spent a lot of time with brands not talking anything about voice, very much like this workshop where we're spending very little time talking about voice, but we're speaking more about strategic principles that will allow us to determine whether or not voice is a solution for the pain points that we may find in our customer journey. But this is exactly why it's been designed this way, the workshop, because with the customer journey, beyond the low involvement and high involvement determination, it's really important to determine what are the pain points in this pre-purchase stage, the purchase stage, and the post-purchase stage. And I'll give you an example. We noticed that a well-known travel company who was essentially selling holiday packages, so you could say that's quite high involvement, they are doing a customer journey mapping process with us. And we realized that pre-purchase, obviously they would provide information through leaflets and on the website, and then the purchase would be made on the website or in store. And there was not that many post-purchase interactions other than like a survey. Now, pre-purchase, getting information on a website lacked a lot of the emotional excitement that comes with booking a holiday package. Because if you think about it, when you're booking a holiday package, there's a certain emotional element that comes with it. And they didn't realize that this is actually a pain point. They were just so used to the status quo that they didn't realize that actually in this pre-purchase stage, there's a lot of emotional energy that can be tapped into. So one of the things we had recommended to them was, first of all, before we think about voice, why don't you determine there's a pain point there, in that there's this whole world of emotional energy in this pre-purchase stage that the only way you're tapping into it is through a blog or through information on the website. So what if you were able to create a voice experience? So this is where we move from the pain to the solution, because you cannot find any solution without a pain. What if there was a voice experience that would have a feature where it would provide some inspirational content, some emotional content that would get the creative or emotional juices bubbling in the user, in the customer, so that they'll basically get to the purchase stage with a little bit more commitment, a little bit more excitement, and for it to differentiate it from other, travel agents out there. So we tested it. We produced a voice experience, and essentially what this did was it gave the user the opportunity to pick answer a series of questions on an ideal destination that they would want based on their personality and based on their preferences of what an ideal holiday would look like, going back and forth in a banterous and in a fun conversation. And then the holiday packages were then determined, almost like a recommendation service, but a recommendation service with personality and emotional triggering. So that generation awareness stage in pre-purchase was achieved from a much more, exciting and emotional frame of reference than just a blog post. Now, what was the success of this? They received 15% higher purchase or acquisition percentage, basically. That came directly from the voice experience. So they basically saw, okay, pre-voice experience, how many people were purchasing, and then post voice experience, we gave it about 3 months. And we saw that over that course of time, 15% had increased. And when they were purchasing, we had this little feature or little question of, where did you hear about us? And we had seen that the vast majority of that increase in sales, if you like, came from, 15% of it came from the voice experience. Now, this was a very good example for us of seeing the fallacy of missing out on a customer journey analysis, because that really provided us with the ability to identify that pain point. Now, that's just the example of a travel agent. Another example that has recently come to my attention as a result of one of my colleagues working on this project external to what we're doing at VACE was with regards to a low involvement product. So that was very much a high involvement product. And that low involvement product was related to a subscription-based product, which essentially provides you with the latest, not homemade, but very artisan baked goods. So not the kind of things you would see in, contemporary, established, commercial bakeries. And what this service does is it provides you once a week with a package of baked goods. It could be pastries, it could be different types of breads, etc., etc. Now, what this company had done is essentially generated a lot of their business through online purchasing. But if you think about it, spending time on a website to come to the decision of subscribing to something like this can be actually quite unnecessary. And what they realized was, by doing this customer journey of the purchase stage, so we're not even talking about pre-purchase or post-purchase, from the purchase stage itself, they realized that the decision-making process of the purchase is something very quick, because remember, it's low involvement. So what if they were able to provide such a voice experience, such a useful voice experience, that the purchase decision can be done just by the voice experience, where we'll essentially say, okay, we've seen what your preferences are for the ideal artisan baked goods. So whether you like sourdough or whether you like gluten-free, etc., etc. Do you want to subscribe now for £10 a month? Now that's quick. It's a yes or a no. And they noticed and this has only been out for about a month now, and it's in the US market. I have to get the name. It was something about Baked for You or something like that. And what my colleague was explaining to me was how they've noticed just within a month that they've been getting increased responses, whether positive or negative, to this subscription model relative to what they had online. So you may think, okay, do I want a quick answer even if it's a no? And I think yes, because what that does is it kind of streamlines your decision-making process with regards to improving your product or service. Because if you're able to get to the answer quicker for a low involvement product, remember, this isn't a high involvement product where you don't want people to make quick decisions. It may be something that you want them to spend time on. But for low involvement products, it may be an option to consider having a purchase feature within the voice application, because when you are being asked, would you like to purchase this, yes or no, is a much quicker experience than going online and going through the whole process. Because remember, with a lot of these voice assistants, you may be able to connect your bank details to the voice application so that you can then immediately purchase something, especially something like a subscription based product or service. So that's just an example again of seeing something with high involvement in the pre-purchase stage and the successes that came from it, and a low involvement product or service in this case, because it is a service plus a product with the artisan baked goods subscription, how the purchase stage can actually be facilitated with voice. So the two main things that I'm really trying to get across here is forget about voice. Don't even think about conversational AI. As a brand, as something, an entity that has a product or a service, determine, do you have a high involvement product or do you have a low involvement product? Determine, what is your customer journey? How are customers interacting with you at different stages of the customer journey? And through that, because none of that has anything to do with voice, once you determine that, you have the strategic foundations to then see, okay, given what I know about voice, and there are tons of courses and tons of material and tons of events and talks you're going to go to in this fantastic summit where you'll learn everything about voice. That's not that important for this stage, because voice can be whatever it is. But if you do not know the strategic foundations of your emerging technology strategy, then it's very difficult for you to know where voice fits into it. So it's almost like a double-pronged analysis. On one side, you have to know what voice can do, because at the end of the day, if you don't know what voice can do, you can't determine the solutions that it can provide to pain points that you may have. But you also have to determine who you are, what are you offering, and what are the pain points in these different elements of your business. So that's the two main things I really wanted to get across. Do we have any questions before I throw it out? Any questions about that? No, Meg, you've got here. Inspiration, emotional content, like that. So cool. It's very good you mentioned about COVID. It's something I was going to get into a bit later, but I think it's really important to mention it now. When we think about what's going on with COVID, for all intents and purposes, our illusion of certainty has been thrown out the window. A lot of the plans we've had in not just our professional life, but private, personal lives, social lives, we've realized that we've been living an illusion of knowing what's to come. And I think with all the challenges that come with it, there's a lot of excitement actually involved in it, and a lot of opportunity involved in it. And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, we're entering an era of not touchless interfaces, but less touch interfaces. And I think we're going to see more and more things being done on a day-to-day basis that don't necessarily require us to touch things, especially with regards to the public realm. Obviously, with voice, there's a whole array of exciting opportunities in that, given the fact that voice is a touchless interface when you want it to be. How does that relate to strategy? How I think it relates to strategy is the sense that COVID is not only going to impact voice strategy, it's going to impact the strategy of a brand in and of itself as an entity. So starting to determine now different stages of the customer journey pre-COVID, you're going to have to reevaluate the different stages of the customer journey during COVID. Because think about it, people are not going to be interacting with you as a brand the same way as they did pre-COVID. So this customer journey analysis is almost embedded within this COVID era. It's going to have to be done anyway, because so much is changing. Business models are changing. Foundational elements of the structure of a business, they're changing. So it's ripe for determining the pain points that existed, not only pre-COVID, but the pain points that exist during COVID with your current customer journey model. And once you're able to do that, obviously you'll be able to find the different stages, the different solutions that a voice assistant can provide. So I'm glad you mentioned COVID, and it's something that I'm thinking of adding onto the online course that we have to be able to dig into, because I think it just throws so many questions in the air that we just don't have answers to. We really don't have answers to it. And I think the main thing we can do at this stage is take a philosophical approach and ask questions, because once we ask the questions, we'll obviously be able to provide the answers. Any other questions? No? Come on, guys. Gotta have some questions. It's a workshop. Nope. No questions? Okay. No problem at all. Now, I think given the fact that there's not many questions, I think it may be worth actually digging into the third strategy pointer, which, again, we dig into much more on the course, but I think it's worth mentioning, and then I want to dig into a little bit more with regards to voice strategy as a whole, given the fact that there's not so much interaction going on. I was hoping we'd have about 20 to 30 minutes of interaction, but I'm going to dig into more with regards to the third strategy pointer, and that is about data. Now, how can you be strategic with data? Because data in and of itself it's just noise. It's just white noise. There is not much insight that is objectively given off from data. Data is very much content, but as we know, no content has meaning without context. So a £5 note, for all intents and purposes, is a piece of paper. It's the economic context that gives the £5 note the value that it has. Same thing with data. Data does not have value unless insight is able to be gathered from it to provide value, essentially. So the context is required. Now, a lot of companies have a lot of data, and a lot of that data is left at the wayside. Very little of it, very few of it is actually utilized to create, value-based services. And I gave the example earlier of Capital One. What Capital One have done is they've seen what are the kind of data we have, and that is a very important question to ask when you're a bank, because you have tons of data, and they've got a lot of data on spending patterns. So think about what kind of data your brand has with regards to customers and their behaviors, because with that, features can be created or born out of these data sets that, as I said, weren't really able to provide much insight. Now, there are different ways of looking into that, and we dig into it more on the course. But one of the things that has really interested me in recent times is the data with regards to emotional responses to questions asked via a chatbot or a voice assistant. Now, obviously, when we look at voice assistants, it's very, very difficult to try and gauge the emotions of the user. And how can you be strategic about that? But something that we've seen is that there are brands that have customer service numbers where customers are able to contact for pre-purchase questions, purchase questions, and post-purchase questions. And a couple of the brands that we spoke with, the strategy that they used to come up with a voice application was looking at the data from the customer service phone calls that were being made. So, for example, a customer would call in and ask about a certain issue they have with something related to the product. Now, we have a ton of recordings from those calls of the customers, the sales, the service personnel from the brand providing answers to that question and seeing the responses to the question, the responses of the customer to the question. It all sounds a little bit Big Brother-ish. But what they did was they saw what are the most popular questions being asked, what was the amount of time dedicated to a particular problem that a customer has. So how long did they spend on the phone call because of a given problem? How many were satisfied with the answers given? What were the things people were calling about? What's most popular, what's not? So tapping into those customer service phone calls, so the data that they have about customer service phone calls, they were then able to go away and map out a voice strategy with regards to what kind of features can they provide in a voice experience, a voice application, that will, for all intents and purposes, not remove the need for a customer service line, but actually kind of take off some of the pressure or load on a customer service facility. So that's another example of utilizing the data that you've got to try and develop a voice application. A comment that's come in. We've got here from Ipsy, why most customers still prefer chatbots over voice bots in India. At least this is the case. That's a very, very good question. And I think the main answer I have for that, and I've actually addressed this in an article that I'm happy to share later. When we think about chatbots, let's step back. When we think about the interactions that we have with our devices, with other humans via our devices, what is the most natural way we get information? So, for example, if I'm speaking with a friend, back in the day, before the world of WhatsApp, before the world of instant messaging services and chat services, we were speaking on the phone. We would go on the phone and speak with people for a certain amount of time to try and get the answers that we want. We're not having that any longer. What's going on now is we are texting. And when we're texting, we get to a situation whereby we do not have the time to be on the phone. We like to be texting. And that's what we see with chatbots as well. With chatbots, it's basically the outcome of us not being on our phones any longer and liking to text. So chatbot taps into that, where it is able to provide us information through the texting platform that we're so used to. So I think that's one of the reasons. And the other reason is because I think chatbots are much more visual. I think there is a certain benefit of getting information visually, which you don't have with voice. My ideal situation is not voice only, it's voice and chatbot. So it's almost having them together, kind of like the Google Assistant app where you're able to tap into both. So that's how I'd see it. I know we're about to finish. I wanted to ask here, my friends have been certified by the voice course. If I'm a beginner, can I join the course? Of course, absolutely. It's. I would say a lot of it is designed for beginners, because again, everyone's a beginner with voice. I would say the whole thing is a beginner. So please, I actually wanted to put this up. So before I go, please do check this out, because I would be happy into much more detail on the voice course. We have a special 50% discount for the summit. So you're able to basically get the highest rated online course for £50. So please do go on thevoicecourse.co. It'll link you to Udemy, and there you have the 50% discount code. It's Voice India. So just put in the code Voice India, and you'll be able to get 50% off. So we really hope you'll join us. Thank you to those who did. I really appreciate it, and do stay in touch. I'd love to hear insights and dig into things a little bit more detail, and hope to see you on the course. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure It was a pleasure, Sina. I'm sure that towards the end there was a lot of participation, a lot of questions from a number of our viewers about the certification. Some of them might want to know if there's any certification for attending this workshop. So for the last 1 hour, whoever's been watching and observing, and even absorbing your knowledge and experience, is there any certificate that they will get, that they can frame and put up on the wall?
Yes, so actually I've provided a certification which is available. It's as I said, it's like the basic foundational level, and there's an additional certification that's available from the course. So they have the opportunity to get two: one the more basic level, and then obviously the more in-depth one with the course. So I believe that is available with your team. So whoever's interested, they should reach out, and we will have certificates available with pleasure.
Yeah, I believe Nikita has asked a question 2 minutes back. Did you spot that? About how inaccurate voice bots are sometimes?
Well, yeah, there's another one there. I'm going to address that one too. Just the one before, multimodal is better. Yes, multimodal, it depends on the use case. Again, we go through that in the course to try and delineate when it's better or when it's not. But multimodal is essentially the ideal situation. I think it is also because sometimes using voice bots can be frustrating when it doesn't understand our question and keeps asking to repeat. Yes, absolutely. Think about a person saying, I don't understand you. I don't understand you. Yeah. I don't understand you. I don't understand you. That would be very annoying if someone in front of you does that. But if it's a text, you don't get that same experience. So absolutely. And I think as voice improves, it's going to come over that. So, and one more question there, will I gain skills on Alexa and Google Assistant on the voice course, or is it focused on one of them? Yes, we obviously dig into Alexa, Google Assistant, but again, it's the strategic macro. It's not the micro detail stuff. It's more on the macro stuff, because if you don't have the macro, in our opinion, the micro is meaningless.
The course that you offer, is it all virtual, or do you have any physical courses? Of course, now it's only virtual, but in the prior to COVID-19, were you doing physical courses as well, where you go sit down, attend the course, have lunch as well on the house?
So it's an online Udemy course, so it's all virtual. However, we do have, we're able to speak with our students separately, get on calls with them, assist them in any projects they've got going on. And of course, if they're based in London, we'll be happy to meet up with them. But no, it's pretty much flexible. Once someone joins the course, they have access to myself and Adi to help them. So yeah, it's pretty open. Right.
So I think we have come to the end. Yes, Sina, thank you so much for spending time with us. We appreciate that. It looks like the questions are now pouring in, but we are, due to paucity of time, we can't take them, but we of course can handle them all offline. It's that inertia. Once somebody asks the first question, then they all start asking questions.
That's
but it. Until that first one comes through, nothing's going to happen. So that happens in every conference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but nonetheless, thank you very much to all of our viewers. If you'd like to interact with Sina, please do so offline. Leave the stage and go to the VIP booth, where you'll find Sina and the other speakers as well. And you're free to interact with Sina and everybody else. And I'm sure he looks forward to answering all of your questions offline. But until then, Sina, thank you very much for spending time with us again. We'll slip into a short networking break now, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. And we will be discussing, just a moment. Our next session is a conversation AI journey for enterprise use cases, and we're going to be listening to Sarandeep Kaur. This is going to be happening in 5 minutes' time. I'll see you at 5:20.